Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2020, 2025. Of course, it's hump day with it being Wednesday, so hopefully everybody's getting over the hump. Of course, we're going to, of course, give people a chance to come in before we get into what we're going to talk about tonight. If you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Yeah, so among my cartoon watching today, of course, I was able to watch the final episode of the color comic series from Celebrity Productions at Ubaya Works. So that was interesting. Let's see now. Got to also see the first appearance of Sweet Pea as well as Popeye took him to the zoo and had to keep saving him from all the lions. Some interesting stuff in that. Um, so gotta look at what tonic immobility is, as Popeye sued the alligator with it, among other things. Let's see. La 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 la. Hmm. Anyways, let's see now. So now we're coming up on 3 minutes here. So I guess I'll talk about what's on tap tonight. So I got a couple of articles I'm going to go over tonight. Both kind of comics related. One, we're going to look at how they're once again rebooting Peter Parker's Spider-Man. We'll be looking at an article that's from Bounding in the Comics, and then from Bleeding Fool. So now apparently the creator of the Canadian comic book hero Captain Canuck has decided that he's going to chime in on the whole tariff situation. You know, so we're going to take a look at that as well. Going to take a look back to last night's WWE NXT. As well as looking ahead to tonight's AEW Dynamite and the wrestling wrap up, and then of course we're going to wrap things up with looking back on this day in each history. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to just go ahead and get started here. Again, a friendly reminder: if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the screen. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Let me check one last time here, and then. All right. So let's go ahead and get ready to get going here then. Oh yeah. There it is. All right. So the first article we're gonna look at for tonight is one from Bounding in the Comics. Hmm. All right, so there we go with that. Oh, there we go. So apparently we do have some comments, which I'll get at in a moment here. Can you hear me now? Can hear you now. Okay. It might have just been me just not saying anything yet there for Shozo. So anyways, all right, so let's get into this first article here. All right, so Amazing Spider-Man retcons Peter Parker's childhood, reveals Bookworm was actually a beer-stealing troublemaker. Article by Spencer McCauley, published earlier today. So now they're really trying to. You almost get the impression that these people are trying to just stick the middle finger at longtime fans. You know, they just want to totally just dump on anything canon that is traditionally canon. So, anyways, let's get into this. Ask practically anyone what they know about the character of Spider-Man, and after various notes about his powers, in parentheses here, and maybe a couple mentions of his and MJ's live action Upside Down in the Rain Kiss, in parentheses, a given respondee is likely to mention something about how before getting his powers, Peter Parker was a bookish and angry young man who often found himself the target of his classmates' constant bullying. And in a testament to the reach of pop culture, they would be absolutely right in their recollection. That is, unless you were to ask them this question in post Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, Number 2 world. Spin the wheel on a Spider-Man story from any medium, and odds are good that at some point it will make mention of the hero's less than fun childhood. In its first ever appearance in Amazing Fantasy Volume 1, Number 15, the second word bubble of the issue sees Flash Thompson replying to the proposal that he and his friends invite Peter to an upcoming dance with the dismissive declaration, quote, Are you kidding? Are you kidding? That bookworm wouldn't know a cha-cha from a waltz, unquote. All of which is followed by a brief montage revealing just how little his Midtown High peers really think of him. Likewise, despite being slightly older in Spider-Man the Animated Series, the show's second episode sees Peter Parker facing the abuse of Flash Thompson, who during a charity ball for the Hardy Foundation, dons a Spider-Man costume and attempts to fall back on old habits and physically intimidate his former classmate into turning down the attentions of his date, Felicia Hardy. Same thing in the first issue of the original Ultimate Spider-Man run. In his very first scene, Peter is shown being an easy and accepted target for bullying, um, which in this case takes the form of a French fry barrage by Midtown High's upper hierarchy. Hmm. Hmm. Let's see. And we will. All right. Again, feel free to comment and or ask questions. If anything grabs your attention here. So speaking of Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film, as mentioned above, this particular seminal chapter in the Wall Crawler's media history introduced mainstream audiences to its titular protagonist um, by showing him being desperately chasing to catch his school bus as another student chooses to laugh at him instead of getting the driver's attention. During the events of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, while breaking into Midtown High to retrieve a thumb drive containing the only remaining records of their old high school era science fair project, Peter questions Harry Osborn, quote, "Why'd you bring us here? We both hated high school," unquote, to which his friend replies, quote, "Remember that time Flash and his buddies cornered me and broke my laptop?" Quote. The various mentions of Peter's childhood isolation could make up an entire Wikipedia entry on their own. But suffice to say, the aspect of his younger years, this aspect of his younger years, has been almost as definitive aspect of his character as Uncle Ben's iconic proverb. Iconic proverb. And for those of you who don't remember that, it's with great power comes great responsibility, is what they're talking about. Anyways, as we continue on, of course, as such, readers who picked up the most recent issue of Amazing Spider-Man would be forgiven for being taken aback by the reveal that far from a bookish nerd with self-esteem issues, the eventual wall crawler was actually a bona fide troublemaker. Last issue, writer Joe Kelly and artist Pepe Larraz and colorist Marte Gracia introduced a new character, Brian Nerid, one of Peter's rare childhood friends, who ends up connecting him with his latest job at Rand Enterprises, itself a subsidiary of Iron Fist Danny Rand's larger business holdings. Though Nerid is only given a very brief amount of page time before a rampaging rhino steals Peter's attention away. The time they do spend together is littered with references, the two having a history of troublemaking, including mentions of a massive stink bomb prank and a flashback to a young Peter smiling after having gotten in a physical fight. Hmm. Yeah, again, kind of the idea of them just poo pooing on what is traditional canon right there. Hmm. Anyways, their shared penchant for delinquency would eventually be outright confirmed with this week's issue, wherein Peter's mind is shown drifting back to memories of him and Brian sneaking away to get a peek at a nudie mag. Running from the cops after being caught stealing beer and snacks from a local bodega, and after being arrested for said shoplifting incident, telling off Uncle Ben and Aunt May when they come to pick him up, and fleeing to raise more HE double hockey sticks with Brian and another as of yet unidentified member of their Freaktastic Four friend group. Yeah, I mean, what they're trying to do with Spider-Man now is like really just they're just literally wiping their rear ends with his established canon here for their own stupid purposes. You know, the thing about Peter Parker being kind of the bullied nerd and then getting superpowers, that's part of the story too. And you like mess with that, you're messing with the very core of who and what Spider-Man is. But of course, these people don't care. They want a new core because they don't like the old core. Now, in the interest of intellectual honesty, it should be noted that during both issues, Spider Man is confirmed to be experiencing extremely intense hallucinations as caused by a cocktail of toxins administered to him by Hobgoblin, Roderick Kingsley, and his Deadpool hybrid clone, Itsy Bitsy. In present, check out Spider Man Deadpool Volume 1 for the whole deal, on parentheses, and intended to make him question his sanity. And while some may speculate that his memories of Brian are part of these hallucinations, this notion is countered by the simple fact that not only does the entirety of Peter's initial reunion with his childhood friend, including his quote unquote, in smaller quotes, fight flashback, happen before Itsy Bitsy is confirmed to have delivered the toxins herself, but Aunt May is shown just pages before their meeting having an explicitly cold reaction to the very mention of his name, thus establishing that her nephew's troubled history did in fact happen. Hmm. Hmm. Huh. Further, as is common with common books in particular, there does exist a good possibility that Kelly has a genuine narrative, in smaller quotes, reveal, no matter how good or bad, regarding Peter's new history. And should that happen, we'll do our best to update this article with that information. However, at current, it appears that despite the widespread hopes that previous writer Zeb Wells' exit from the book would herald a better era of storytelling for the web crawler, Marvel Comics is instead sticking to their guns and doing all they can to run roughshod all over Spider-Man's character in services of cheap drama. Again, they just seem to like poo-pooing on established continuity. What it seems to boil down to. Let's see. See what you have. Marvel constantly retcons their characters. Once upon a time, Frank Castle was just a guy who went postal on organized crime after they killed his wife and child. Yeah, I know, and I know about the whole Frank Castle, the Punisher situation, because we even covered some of the stories on there talking about how he regrets using guns and became more of a samurai type, and then he was somehow, after he was killed, was sent to a place where he was like just protecting children in some netherworld region or what have you. Yeah, I get that. But anyways, so now let's go ahead and move on to the next article we're going to do, which is over at Bleeding Fool. It is in the comic section, so we'll just go straight there. And of course, tomorrow we'll do Indie Comic Showcase number 300. We'll do that one tomorrow. But this is the one that we're doing tonight here. And I don't know if Rick is here, but I'm sure he'd be interested in this article as well, considering it's about one of his country's superheroes. So, Bronze Age Canadian superhero brought back for anti-Trump political activism. Article by Avi Green, published today. Captain Canuck. All right, so here we go. Here. Reuters reports that superhero Captain Canuck, originally created in the 1970s, has been revived just because a certain resident of Canada doesn't like Trump's tariff policies. And this is going to the Reuters article here. U.S. President Donald Trump's annexation threats and tariffs have breathed new life into a superhero from the 1970s, Captain Canuck, a government agent with inhuman strength who defends Canada's sovereignty. Quote, all of a sudden, Canadians are looking to Captain Canuck as a symbol, and it's basically to them, Captain Canuck symbolizes independence, unquote, said Richard Cumley, 74, the artist who co-created the comic book character. Cumley said he created the character at a moment when he thought Canadians wanted their own icon, given that the United States had Captain America. Quote, I think there was an undercurrent, so to speak, in Canada in the 70s. So I think Canadians were starting to feel like, like they should acknowledge the fact that we had our own country, we had our own culture, and be proud of the fact that we were Canadians, unquote, Cumley said. And then this is Avi's response to that. Well, gee whiz, it's great to take pride in nationality, but that doesn't mean you should act as though what your neighboring country is doing is automatically wrong, especially considering all the disastrous policies Canada took up over the past decade or so under leftist politicians like Justin Trudeau. Is that something to be proud of? He makes a kind of an interesting point there. Now back to the Reuters article. Now back to the Reuters article here. Cumley said his original storyline envisioned Canada as a world power that faces challenges from groups seeking to infiltrate, destabilize, and take over the country. Quote, of course, never in any of those stories was it America that was going to be taking over Canada, unquote, Cumley said. For the cover of Captain Canuck's 50th anniversary, Cumley depicted superhero wagging his finger at Trump, who has said he wants Canada to become a U.S. state. Quote, it's got a lot of Canadians, thinking about their identity as Canadians and feeling more united as Canadians. We feel like, okay, we've got to stand in opposition to these proposals, unquote, he said. Cumley said he has received more calls from Canadian companies that have expressed quote-unquote keen interest in the fictional character due to the political tensions between the two neighboring countries. Quote, so in a sense, we have Mr. Trump to thank for a bit of resurgence, unquote, he said. So, all right, well, I mean, yeah, that's, I guess, somewhat fair, thus far. I mean, if the whole point was just to reignite your national pride in your country, that's fine, But if you're gonna take it further and try to trash America or say what America is doing wrong, then maybe it's not such a good thing. All right. So, anyways, getting back to this, and why exactly does Trump matter, but not earlier presidents like Barack Obama and Joe Biden? They had plenty of disasters and other failings that could have been damaging for Canada. By extension, yet we're told only when somebody like Trump comes along with specific policies, it suddenly matters. Okay. Well, I can see the point though that they're making why Trump matters, because Trump has directly made statements that he wants to make Canada the 51st state. He's and it's because he's done stuff more directly, whereas maybe as Avi said in his analysis here, the stuff that Obama and Biden did was would have more indirectly involved. They never came out and said, well, yes, we're going to take over Canada or we're going to subjugate Canada. Whereas Trump kind of has said that. And that's what's got people on edge over it. Please. And about Trump wanting, quote unquote, annexation, I would assume that's just a form of jest. And considering how poorly Canadian country leaders of recent handled specific issues, what's the point of worrying about what Trump says and not what a leftist like Trudeau does? To think that a comic that was presumably not intended as something overtly political in the Bronze Age would be brought back for this. Cumley is only souring his legacy in creation, much like Jim Starlin recently did with Dreadstar. When even a creator-owned comic is put to use for heavy-handed politics and ultra-cheap topics, it taints the comic's own legacy, and that's sadly what Cumley and Starlin have done with their creations. So all right. So that's it. that's it on that front. I actually do need to step away for a moment. I'll be right back, but while I'm gone, I'll put some music on. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So, anyways, let's see. Anything new? No, I guess nothing new in the comment section. All right. So, as I said, I'm gonna do the Indie Comic Showcase article tomorrow night. So, what we'll do now, of course, we'll move on to this day in each. I'm sorry. We'll move on to the wrestling wrap up. So first off, we're going to go back to last night's NXT to talk about, of course, what happened on last night's NXT. Coming off of WrestleMania weekend, and of course their event on Saturday, Stand and Deliver. Which you saw, where you saw, of course, a new women's NXT champion new women's NXT North American champion crowned in Sol Ruka. You had new tag team champions crowned in Hank and Tank. So those are two of the highlights from there. But on last night's NXT, the show opened up with Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez of the Judgment Day defending the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship over Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley and retaining that title in the defense. In a match for the NXT Heritage Cup, Legacy King defended against former champ Noam Dar from the former NXT Heritage Cup champion. Noam Dar became a two-time Heritage Cup champion as he defeated She defeated Lexis King. Then you had Thea Hall defeat Fallon Henley in a singles match in which, after a botched attempt at interference from the other members of Fatal Attraction, after being rammed arm first into the steel steps, Thea Hall got the submission victory on Fallon Henley, locking in a Kimura lock on her. In tag team match, Dion Lennox and Osiris Griffin of Dark State defeated Javon Evans and Miles Bourne in a tag team match. In the main event, saw Stephanie Vaquer defeat Roxanne Perez to retain the NXT Women's title. After the match, of course, Julia came out to stare down Stephanie Vaquer, and you also saw Jordan Grace as well. Eyeing the NXT Women's Championship. With that, also happening on last night's NXT show, during a segment between Trick Williams and NXT champion Oba Femi, they were interrupted by Joe Hendry, who came out to also confront Femi, as Trick Williams was trying to get up in Femi's face to try to get another shot at the NXT title. Joe Hendry came out, and which led to basically Femi and Hendry, the two guys who are holding both, as of course Joe Hendry is the current TNA World Heavyweight Champion, basically throwing Trick Williams out of the ring and then facing off against each other. So that's all we got from last night's NXT news. Now looking ahead to tonight's AEW Dynamite, as they're looking ahead to tonight's AEW Dynamite, as they're building towards Double or Nothing next month. Next month's Double or Nothing. Tonight's Dynamite will be coming from the Lakefront Arena in New Orleans, Louisiana. Already slated for the show. The other women's. So, of course, last Thursday, Mercedes Moné had advanced to the finals by defeating Athena on Collision. And now in the other semifinal match for the women's in the women's tournament, women's portion of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, Jamie Hayter will be taking on Chris Statlander. The winner to go on to face Mercedes Moné at Double or Nothing next month on May 25th. In a tag team match that was set up last week, Kevin Knight and Speedball Mike Bailey and the Jet Kevin Knight will team up to take on the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson. Will Ospreay and Brody King will team up to face the Don Callis family members of never openweight champion Konosuke Takeshita and Josh Alexander. And then also you'll see Mark Briscoe taking on Ricochet. Now, as we're mentioning here, of course, one of the matches it'll be in the other women's semifinals, as the finals for the Owen Hart tournament will be taking place at next month's Double or Nothing, with the winners of the tournaments getting getting a shot at the respective world champions. So the men's winner, Will Ospreay, of course, advance to the finals by defeating Konosuke Takeshita. Will be taking on the winner of the Hangman Adam Page and Kyle Fletcher match coming up. The winners of the men's tournament will get a shot at the AEW World Champion, right now being Jon Moxley, while the women's winner will get a shot to take a shot at the women's world champion, who currently is Toni Storm. So with that being said, that's enough for the wrestling wrap-up for tonight. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take a look back at this day in Niche history. As today is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. So we're going to take a look back at this date in Niche history. History! So 1985, 95, 2010, and 2010. All right, so first off, I'm going to head back 40 years ago. As on this date, 40 years ago, back in 1985, the 30th issue of Volume 1 of New Mutants went on sale on this date back in 1985. The story was The Singer and Her Song, written by Christopher Claremont, with Bill Sienkiewicz doing the art, lettering done by Joseph Rosen, and Glynis Wayne doing the coloring. So on this date, 40 years ago today, the 30th issue of New Mutants, Volume 1, went on sale on newsstands on this date back in 1985. So now, moving on to the next piece of niche history, we move ahead to 1995, as we're now going to wish a happy birthday. So, happy 30th birthday to Paige Wooding, better known to wrestling fans as Jamie Hayter, who we talked about, who will also be tonight on our 30th birthday. We'll be facing off against Chris Statlander to go up against to see who goes on to the finals of the Owen Hart tournament to get a shot at Toni Storm. So happy 30th birthday to Jamie Hayter. Moving ahead now to 2010, on this date in 2010. On this date in 2010, Ben 10 Ultimate Alien and Generator Rex both premiered on Cartoon Network. So on this date, 15 years ago today in 2010, Ben 10 Ultimate Alien and Generator Rex both premiered on Cartoon Network on this date back in 2010. And 2010 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As also on this date in 2010, Madhouse's Chi-Chi Sweet Home Chi-To Kochi Desu was released on this date back. The Madhouse OVA Chi Sweet Home Chi-To Kochi Detsu was released on this date back in 2010. Also, apparently, Production IG also, I even missed this earlier, but Production IG also released OVA, Holic Row, Holic Row was also released on this date back in 2010. So, let's see here. All right, so let's see. I haven't seen either. I haven't seen either, as my parents didn't have cable then. Oh, okay. All right. Well, with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. As we're gonna wrap things up here. We'll be back here with more Niche News tomorrow, and don't forget this Sunday, I'll be joined by Apex from Apex Comics, as we'll be looking back to comics went on sale in May of 1940. This week, of course, we'll be focusing on Fawcett Comics. So we'll be reading, of course, from Wiz Comics #6 and from the first 3 issues of Nickel Comics. We'll explain what Nickel Comics was all about. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.